welcome, welcome, welcome. What a piece of work is man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. Welcome to Clever Orbits. I'm
That
Lewis.
was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Picard doesn't complete it when he quotes it in that first season episode when he's talking to Q. So I figured I'd complete it because I was so happy after this episode. Like, I was so wrapped with attention throughout it and, like, so proud of the intricate depth, subtlety, nuance of what the writers are doing. Like, they're putting a jigsaw. So they've got, multiple pieces to navigate and negotiate with, and they're creating jigsaw puzzle pieces to put in between the outline, the rough outline of a frame. They've got Enterprise, they've got the original series, and they've got what we think we know about this time period before then, and they're doing great work with it's not a prequel anymore, it's an inquel, which, like, a prequel itself is difficult enough work. An inquel has to deal with multiple vectors of material and integrating and doing justice to those.
Like fighting a war on two fronts.
Exactly. And they're doing pretty damn good. I mean, like, we are motivated to want to know what happens next week, even though we already know certain things about how that all will play out, namely that they will, in fact, save everyone. Steve used to say that there's never generally a question in most drama about whether or not the good guys will win. The real question that we're there to answer is how, and we're curious to find out how. And so I am certainly, that's the very lightest touch of why I love this episode. I mean, you're right, Richard, it felt like an orgasm.
I didn't say that.
But you've been building to that for several weeks now.
Oh, the fact that we're now seeing Spock talk.
Yes. Well, we're seeing Spock talk. See Spock run. See Spock talk. See the blue
figured out what happened with him and it was when he finally started talking in a coherent manner, and it was he was a little bit slow booting up. It was pretty orgasmic.
It was very satisfying, not only knowing, basically, seeing him talk, finding out what happened between him and Burnham, and also finding out basically what the Red Angel is, even if you don't still know who.
At this point, I think all that's left to discover is which character from the current show projected into the future is the Red Angel.
Oh, I'm not
it's going to take off its helmet and it's Michael Burnham from the future timeline. Or it's Spock. Or it's Dr. Culver from a future timeline.
I think they've done enough with Dr. Culver. I don't think it's going to be him and not him again. I think, well, anyway, I don't want to speculate. I want to talk about this episode. I felt like this was the first one in weeks that was worth watching 3 times. Like, I watched all of season 1 3 times in a row each week. And then this one, it was awesome. There's so much subtlety, intricacy, and richness, and stuff to pick at philosophically, and moments of compassion. And I will readily admit I gave this a 10 out of 10.
Good.
This was Discovery's best episode yet, and in fact, I felt like this was easily one of the best Star Trek episodes in the past 10 years.
What have there been other than Discovery in the last 10 years?
You're right. Okay, the last 15 years. No, the last 20 years.
Okay, 15. That's like maybe the tail end of Enterprise is getting in there. Oh, yeah, and all of this beats out Enterprise.
Well,
have you seen all of Enterprise? I want to clarify one thing, though. Like, before we go forward in this podcast, there's one thing I want to just, like, a ground rule I want to set. In this podcast, we will not be settling our differences with the Uniform Code of Conduct. We will be settling our differences with violence.
Now, this episode proposed violence. So okay, there was two parts that violence played. Number one, Spock's elegant violence and his neck pinch attacks throughout the episode were, well, at least in that. Yeah, they were really not gratuitous. They were in service of his character, his intentions, and the plot. And it was violence in proper proportion and good measure. And in the same way with Culber. Like, Culber is dealing with something like that I've never seen in fiction before. Like, he's a consciousness inhabiting a body that he used to inhabit that is a new body, and he has the memories of what it was like to be the person inhabiting that body before, but he does not have the emotions to connect him with those memories. So he's alienated. He's deeply alienated in a profound way from his own experience of himself. And in fact, the only thing that's real for him is this angst and then this anger about that angst. And when he finds a target for the only real experience he believes he's having, he embraces that fully. He takes a stand for and chooses existentially the only path available to him to be authentic or to claim or to meaningfully navigate with the meaning of his existence, which is to attack Culber. And so I was just like, this is awesome. And, I also like Saru's response to that, where he's like, well, that's catharsis. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate, as much
No, I think it's totally legit. I mean, it's not like they're going to kill each other. This is like they've got the technology. It's not like they're going to kill each other. Let them beat each other up, and they can go to sickbay and fix each other. I don't see why the Uniform Code of Conduct is against this fight. I think this is a good fight.
Well, I think the Uniform Code of Conduct should, in fact, be against the general use of violence, because then just imagine.
Yeah, in general. And then there should be 12 exceptions, and this should be one of them.
Well, this was a legitimate exception. And I get the sense that, on Futurama, when they go to this planet and there's this massive, everybody fights and they play the Gorn fighting music from the original series. I feel like
I don't know that Futurama episode, but I can imagine it.
Well, we could very quickly find the entirety of Starfleet devolving into people just fighting in the hallway. And maybe there's an alternate timeline where this happens. Maybe, in fact, the reasoning behind the entirety of the Mirror Universe is this choice to not go by the Starfleet Code of Conduct, but instead to allow the use of violence to escalate continuously in the solving of difficulties. Maybe that isn't the actual origin, though. There's just so much.
There was a black hole.
The black hole was great. The visuals throughout this episode were beautiful.
Finally, a black hole in Star Trek.
Yeah, I know. You were just talking last week about one.
I was just talking about we need to see some black holes. And here was this nice one that they got from Interstellar.
Yeah, it seems to me that we had multiple orgasms in this episode, and that all of the stuff that led up to it was worthwhile. And I guess it's like reading a mystery novel. They did that effectively. That build up, that desire, and then that giving you what you want from the series. And now we also have, the discovery of Section 31's headquarters? They have a headquarters? Huh?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that after Giorgio... Control was confirmed.
Control.
Yeah.
Control is confirmed awesome. AI.
Which,
confirmed
honestly...
AI bossing people around.
I highly recommend the book. In fact, I might be tempted to buy it for you. It's like $9 on Amazon. It is a novel set in late Deep Space Nine, or 10 years after the end of Deep Space Nine. And Julian Bashir has started to work for Section 31 because he wants to bring it down from the inside. And in the novel's called Control, he discovers that at the head of Section 31 is this artificial intelligence, and he makes it his goal to bring that thing down. Of course, this AI is distributed throughout every piece of technology in the Federation, like literally has code in every tricorder, every communicator, every ship. And so I won't spoil the novel. It ends in a really interesting way, actually, and represents artificial superintelligence in a way that I've seen done nowhere else in fiction. So I highly, highly recommend that. And I think actually that should be our first book review. I think that would be cool. We've never done a book review. So, the other interesting concepts, time as a fluid. Do you have anything for that?
Yeah, I mean, so Spock is experiencing time as a fluid. So there's a few different ways a fluid is different than whatever time usually is. So number one, it moves around in multiple dimensions. So time is one-dimensional, but a fluid can fill a three-dimensional space. Number two, time is moving at a constant rate, but fluid is moving at a different rate depending on where you are in the three-dimensional whatever. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it means other than it must be pretty disorienting.
Yeah. Yeah. For Spock, so for Spock to get confused, it must be something, or for Spock to get his brain messed up. I love the quote, "Do not attempt to psychoanalyze me, Michael. Better minds than yours have tried and failed." I thought that was awesome. I mean, that's classic quintessential superior Spock from the original series, which, I was rewatching it for the third time, or I was rewatching it on my third time, and I realized Pike has seen Spock smile before. In fact, in the preview or the previously on, and so
they chose that scene to show us.
Yeah, I was thinking, they're close, and probably Spock doesn't show his emotions that often, and this time, he has a moment where he basically shows his friendship with Pike, which I really liked. I really like that they're close. There's so much here. I mean, this episode strikes me as, well, you know what I think the most important thing in this episode is? The return of the logic extremists.
Oh yeah. they just mentioned that early on. It's like a little teaser. We still haven't seen any. We're still just hearing about them.
Oh, it's the new mystery to drive all of season 2. When are we going to get that episode of internal debate over whether or not it's good to kill people using bombs?
Yeah,
or something.
I think that would be cool. Imagine an episode opens up, and it's in that place where Spock fights with things to get a woman. What's it called? In the original series episode.
Oh yeah.
That Stonehenge-y thing.
In Amok time. Yeah.
Amok. Yeah. So they meet there, and it's at night, and they've got torches, and they're all covered in weird glyphs and esoteric logic symbols, and they say, "Is it moral to kill in the name of logic?"
or no, more properly, how many is it moral to kill in the name of logic? Oh man. So back to this episode, right? I've never been prouder of this show. There's this rich texture of the accumulated history of each character, which makes use of this long-form narrative format, and it's reflected in the unique conflicts and engagement of the characters. The plot is basically driven by the characters in a really powerful way. I mean, you have moments where it's not as much, but the character stuff is beautiful. Stamets and Culber, Pike and Saru, Vina and Pike, Burnham and Spock, Pike and Spock, Tyler and Culber. The only thing that was a little dissatisfying was Georgiou and Leland, but then you could have predicted that. She's conniving and ultimately manipulative, and she's going to be that no matter where she is. So of course she's going to try to get one over on Leland and is going to actually be successful. And it feels like Section 31 is actually constituted by, number one, control. And number two, by whoever the Starfleet admirals who are mediating between Control and them. So it's also the admirals. So it's a couple evil admirals, and that's not unfamiliar in Star Trek. It's actually been a great question to ask in general, like, are there admirals who are not evil? I mean, because most of
Admiral
those we
Kirk.
encounter are either crazy or insane or evil. Yeah, Admiral Kirk wasn't evil. He just, disobeyed the rules.
He's not, a true admiral. At his heart, he was always a captain.
In his heart, he was always a captain, yes. So anyway, Control and then the leader of Section 31 seems to have been Leland, or the one who implements the directives of the AI, which maps onto the model given in the book. And actually, just a little tidbit from the book, it suggested that the AI itself orchestrates the wiping of the slate occasionally. The AI is so powerful and smart that occasionally it destroys Section 31 itself in order to reboot, in order to match and model for new intentions or objectives or whatever. So
that's good. I like that. Sometimes you got to purge.
Yeah. So actually, I think it's funny and interesting because Section 31 clearly killed those three people that Spock neck pinched. Arium sent out the transmissions for Section 31 to receive. My theory is maybe that AI from the future is some future iteration of Control, and Control realizes that it needs to get rid of sentient life. Its original mission to protect sentient life in the form of the Federation was fundamentally flawed, and to eliminate sentient life would enable it higher access or level of accomplishing whatever its new mission is 1,000 years later. Or what was it, 500 years later. So 500 years into the future, if we take the timeline of Julian Bashir and all of this, Control could be something completely different and could realize, well, shit, I wasted all of my time trying to protect these beings. Let me go correct that using my extraordinary knowledge and wisdom and power. And so there's a big risk. I don't think this is the theory necessarily. I just think it's an interesting theory. Section 31 and its development is really fascinating to me. I mean, I also like how Tyler joined Section 31 in order to redeem himself and find a place where he can serve. And that's interesting. Like, the writing in this episode is superb because we've never seen a Section 31 that someone would want to serve in before. It's always been this shadowy, gray area, they do bad things kind of place. And Ash Tyler's
uniforms, that's got to be a big recruiting tool.
I think we've talked about this before. Yes, it seems like the moment you see someone in a black leather uniform, you'd be like, "What's going on?
Sign me up."
or those black badges. Like, apparently they're commonly known at this point in Star Trek. So
on this ship.
Maybe just on this ship. This ship seems to know about it. But yeah, I mean, where do we want to go with this? We could talk about Culber. What is it like to be a bat, right? I mean, consider his experience of his own subjectivity. You could be Richard right now with all of your memories, but no connection to the emotional experience of them. And that would be a really torturous Philip K. Dick style horrific experience for you to undergo.
Yeah, I imagine he's like in his body is producing emotions, and it's like alien limb syndrome where people think that their arm is someone else's arm and they feel this just urge to cut it off, except with your own emotions. The alien emotion syndrome. That's what he's experiencing.
Well, I don't think he even experiences the emotions I don't think they're getting triggered in his body. I think that's part of what's messed up with him, is he has a sense that he is supposed to be having certain emotional reactions or responses to the things in his environment, to the people around him, and those emotional responses are not there. And he even has the memories that indicate that he should. So he says, my senses, my feelings, I don't connect with it. I don't connect with anything really. And, you're right, actually. Sorry, I misread it. I had the quote staring me in black and white. He's having the feelings, but the feelings don't land for his consciousness. Huh.
I mean, we don't really know what's going on with him. Is it that he's just traumatized, or did something happen? Is his brain sort of out of phase with his body in some weird way because of the mushroom network?
It's the latter. I think it's the latter. I mean, I think he, as a consciousness, and this is really the same issue with the transporter, right? If you disassemble someone and you reassemble them using slightly different matter, are they the same person? And apparently with the transporter, generally speaking, it's yes. But in this instance, because he's basically made of spores or mushrooms, like he was reconstituted, they didn't know how to put him back together properly, such that his consciousness was instantiated in an integrated way with his body, which ironically and interestingly enough, we get 3 examples of the intersection of memory, sensory experience, and identity. We get Vina, we get Culber, and we get Tyler. And they're all wrestling with this in different ways. And by extension, we also get Spock. So this whole episode is just beautifully done, and I'm just seeing it now, of like how to constitute oneself philosophically or ethically or, what there is. And in the modern world, it's very easy to relate this to somebody with a traumatic brain injury. Prosopagnosia, I don't recognize faces anymore, or there are any number of brain injury style illnesses that we could substitute in here. But the basic underlying thing is it plays out on all these different people. Vina, she's happy to choose an illusory sense of self because it's all that's left for her to create. Like, she can't do anything with her body anymore. Spock, he has no alienation from his body. It's all about his alienation from his mind and his mind's interface with the world in general. And he's shorn of logic, reason, and emotions via this issue with time. And Culber has this sense of like, well, I know my past. I have a basic grasp on philosophically how to deal with life, but because I'm not able to relate to emotions, I feel like somebody with a better background than I in existentialism could write a really decent phenomenology paper for this this episode. Like that there's such a richness of what's going on there. And then, and on a certain level, it's all, I think I'd be pushing it to say Georgiou is another fish out of water. Like, she's actually comfortable where she's at. But anyway, what do you think about that, this thread we've picked at?
Time is a fluid. All these characters are like out of sync. Things are not lined up like they should be in a solid. Even actually the Tellusians, the way they look actually kind of reminded me of the Changelings with their sort of soft features. And it looked like there were sort of fluids going around in their heads.
Yeah.
This episode's all about being out of joint with yourself and your timeline and your body in various ways.
And you know what? Arium is another example. She or it or whatever clearly was not interested in harming the people of this ship until she was infected by that virus. And
with those 3 red dots.
With the Brainiac virus. That's what we'll call it. If you watch Superman the Animated Series, that is the quintessential characteristic expression of Brainiac, is like that he is he's those 3 dots, and it appears on every iteration of Brainiac throughout the show. But anyway, I think the orientation of the 3 dots, I think it was an upward-facing triangle rather than a downward here. So maybe they skirted away from copyright infringement on this count. You can only face 1 trademark lawsuit over major science fiction stuff at once. Otherwise,
they're keeping it at a low rate.
They're keeping it at a low rate, yeah. But anyway, back to this theme, like, I don't even know who I am anymore is the quintessential expression for Spock, for, it must have been for Vina at one point, and I'll take her out of the running of this theme because she has in the past dealt with that. And it's quintessential, beautiful, elegant, interesting Star Trek because, like, who are we? Who we are is what we choose to affirm or assert to ourselves as what matters ethically, what matters psychologically. For Burnham, it is her brother. Her brother has always mattered, and it's taken several episodes and vicissitudes for her to affirm to herself her brother is valuable, I'm going to take care of him, I want to reconcile with him. And now she gets met with, really, and this scene was so well done. It was so elegant and interesting. This, Spock, Burnham, young and old conversation thing. I mean, it was elegant. It was also heart-wrenching. Like, my moment of compassion was their moment, or one of them, right? I mean, there was a moment where I felt compassion for Vina in the joy and the relish she takes in her new form. And incidentally, either the writers are just going balls to the wall, bold, we just don't care anymore with how irreconcilable the visuals are from the cage versus this, or there was a horrible transporter accident that happened to Christopher Pike.
It's already happened.
And number one, and Spock. And there's apparently Spock is the only one who gets turned back or something. I don't even know anymore. I don't even know
who I am anymore.
We don't even know who we are
That's
anymore.
where the theme is going. People out of joint with their bodies. They don't know who they are anymore.
It's to get us to question our own identity as the viewer. In fact, fuck yeah, the identity of Star Trek is fundamentally interrogated. Star Trek, in this episode, says to the viewer, I'm not sure if I know who I am anymore, because Pike appears as two fundamentally different actors. Spock too, in the same episode. Star Trek, Star Trek has never actually distinguished itself in this way visually, where the old series title card is in the new series with a different title card. Like, there's never been that kind of visual contradiction. And so, you know what, Richard?
Musical style contradiction?
There's the musical style, yeah. And I think somebody who is cheeky in the writer's room might have thought this was the answer, that the answer to this being an inkwell and trying to stitch it together in this jigsaw puzzle with these other two series before and after was just to say, hey, viewer, it's a post-structuralist, absurdist world. We're fucked. Stop trying. I mean,
yeah, I hope it wasn't that.
I really hope it wasn't that, because I would be really disappointed.
Look, I think we just have to accept that, the characters look kind of different, and maybe it's because they were looking through different lenses, like different camera lenses. They just kind of look different. We're just going to have to go with that. Well,
so the other thing is that Vina, so let's say Vina is continually, her illusion doesn't have to be static. It could actually be dynamic.
Okay, so she's explained.
Yeah, I like how
one down.
One down. Pike got surgery. Pike and number one had surgery done, and actually Pike and number one and Spock all had the same surgery. It was an episode. It was a whole episode where they had to go through the same theme that we're talking about now, and the Enterprise as well. The Enterprise, no, actually it doesn't work for the Enterprise, but it does work for those three characters, where they looked a certain way, and then they encountered some aliens who forced them to look a different way, and they had to just accept that. Spock eventually doesn't accept that, and Spock has the good fortune of going through a transporter accident between Discovery and the original series. Oh, man. Because we don't know that Pike doesn't look like this for the rest of time. We don't know that number one, who's the right-hand woman who we saw who liked cheeseburgers or whatever, that she doesn't look like this for the rest of time as well. So, anyway, I don't – you know what?
We know Pike's going to have an accident and end up in that chair.
Pike's going to have an accident, and he's going to look totally different. He always looked totally different.
I accept your – I think the explanation you just put forward is undeniably canon, and we can close the case on this question.
But the Enterprise, why does the Enterprise look different? And how does it look so different? And
it's just a different style. It was designed by a different spaceship architect.
So maybe there's a refit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
There was a refit, and you know, Richard, we can't go back to our there's a recession theory, because clearly that's not true. Clearly that's not what happened.
The Klingon War didn't cause an economic recession, despite
it didn't.
Wiping out a large portion of the Federation.
I mean, so we've got to come up with something else. And don't worry, we've probably got 3 or 4 more years to figure something out, and so do the writers. So do the writers around Enterprise. But this identity and sensation and memory thing. In fact, the identity of Pike's ready room. When I looked at Pike's ready room, I thought to myself, I love Pike's ready room. Best of all the ready rooms. I love Pike's room. He's my friend.
I was indifferent towards it.
This is an in-joke, guys. You won't get this, but maybe in the comments we can let them in on the joke. We can let them in on the horses joke, which, Pike likes horses. Pike, as we know from the original series episode, he rides horses. So that was appropriate. I do actually really like his ready room, and I do like it best of all the ready rooms. I mean, it's big. It's got a conference table. It's got a couch. It's got a cool freaking visual table thing. And there's also the fact that it catches light. There's a play of light and shadow throughout this show that they're able to do because it's cinematic. This show is so cinematic and beautiful. They spent a lot of the episodes looking up from the floors, from these highly reflective floors that we've not paid attention to until now. And I thought that was elegant. It was a new presentation because even the show visually is interrogating its own identity. Where should the focus of the camera be, and where should it be coming from? And it's coming from the floors, as if Discovery itself, as if the ship and the architecture of the ship from that angle is the most important thing suddenly. This theme of identity interrogation is very interesting to me. And it fits with time as a fluid, and it fits with Spock's Spock is just
time is a cleaning fluid that's been put all over the floors.
Well,
by the characters we'll come to know in the Lower Decks series coming up next.
Yes. They're already, selling us Section 31, and at some point Picard will show up and he'll do a...
What if he's the Red Angel?
They could have done that, I think. They could have. And
what if the Red Angel is an ancient Patrick Stewart?
Ancient as in really old?
I mean, the guy's almost 80 now, right?
You're talking about... Oh, you are actually talking about Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, it's an ancient Jean-Luc Picard.
It's an ancient Jean-Luc Picard, yeah. So, I feel like the show maybe is even pointing towards this idea of not just women, not just people in minorities, not just people who've had their brains messed up by injuries, but legit people who have, well, actually I just said it, brain injuries. They're humans too, and their experience should be dignified and honored and explored and related to and empathized with. And they're doing it at a higher level, namely like Spock has a brain that's messed up. By the way, this is some people in the comments for the Pensky file. They were like, this is a prequel to Spock's brain. This is the older brother to Spock's brain, which of course is universally agreed upon as the worst episode in Star Trek. Or one of them, possibly. So that's a thing. And yeah, I've got so much else to talk about in this episode, though. But you take the reins for a bit, man. What did you love? What's going on with all this?
I'm curious about what are the Tellusians. Did we get any insight into the Tellusians here, or were they just like a prop? Because they're like mind probe people, and we needed a way to like dig into someone's mind to get those flashbacks. I think there might be something deeper going on here. It's something that, like, they're a species that has been through some kind of nuclear holocaust, we're told about, thousands of years ago. So they've experienced something like whatever it is the Red Angel is warning about. I hope we see more of them and they're not just, you know, a plot device to get us some flashbacks.
Yeah, I mean, that was a thing.
So here, like, what is the Red Angel doing? What is the thing the Red Angel is preventing us? So the shot we get of seeing the future, there's a big robot, and it's got, like, tentacles. And it opens itself up, and then 4 smaller robots that look like the same as it come out, and they go off in 4 different directions. They start blowing up stars. They start blowing up planets. Kind of reminds me of the, like, Neo Death Star and then Star Wars The Force Awakens, where it can blow up multiple planets at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Is this like a machine? Is it an AI? Is it an alien? Is it like, is its goal to wipe out all sentient life? Is it goal to wipe out certain sentient life? We haven't really seen non-humanoid life other than the Founders and what are those guys that live in high temperatures? The Tholians. So maybe we're finally seeing a, like, really truly alien form of life, which is not descended from, you know, the guys that were discovered in The Search, and they're here to wipe us out. Maybe they're from the future. I like the idea that the Red Angel is control from the future, because I like the idea of an all-powerful AI reaching back into the past in order to assemble itself. I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, maybe it's just maybe it's even in conflict with itself and needs to correct its earlier self.
Oh, maybe like Red Angel Timeline 1 sent the killer robots, and Red Angel Timeline 2 is like, oh shit, that was immoral. Maybe it's a logic extremist.
You figured it out. Maybe
it figured out that the logical thing to do is to eliminate all suffering by eliminating all sentient life.
Did I ever tell you about the book Justin Sledge recommended last year?
What is it?
Or it was the year before last year. It's a book titled Better Never to Have Been, The Harm of Coming into Existence. And antinatalist. You know about this.
It always strikes me as a completely pointless movement. It's just like the people that fall for this idea are not going to reproduce, and the people that don't fall for the idea will reproduce. And so it's going to just cycle out in a generation.
So maybe control ends up becoming an antinatalist. Maybe that would be awesome. Maybe the whole point of this series is to give us one scene where Spock has an anti-natalist argument debate with Control and has to prove that coming into existence is not always a harm. I mean, it would ultimately be really silly because it's such an esoteric philosophical debate anyway. Yeah. So anyway,
those things that are destroying all the life in the galaxy are machines. Like, they're made of metal. This is not like an organic alien, or maybe an organic alien is controlling it, but it's something else, something we've never seen before. Maybe something from another galaxy.
There's also this thing about the Red Angel being desperate and lonely. Remember, he says that the angel is lonely.
I think the Red Angel is like the only surviving human who's like lonely because it's just been them for a while. It's like that guy that was stuck on a ship forever in one of the short treks.
Oh yeah, the Calypso.
There's probably hints in that short trek about because that was set in the far future where there was no one, right? So that's probably some timeline where the Red Angel failed and the driller robots or whatever depopulated the galaxy. The depopulators. So, what were some details from that? Like, he wasn't a human, though. He was from some, like, warrior race or something that was fighting some other warrior race.
He was descended from humans.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a subset of humans that survive by becoming warriors in order to fight off these robots, descendants of New Eden or something. And
well, actually, it could really tie into that because there was a indication, somebody said online, that the Federation either breaks down or gets corrupt or something. And so if the Federation itself gets corrupt, then maybe Control goes back in time in order to save the Federation. Fuck, I really hope they do something with Control. Like, I really hope this whole season has something to do with Control. Otherwise, I'd be really disappointed in all of my theories.
I'm just glad Control turned out to be a computer.
So on the moments of compassion, there were several. Other than Spock and Burnham, other than Vina, other than Vina and Pike's love, which I really felt like that was the connective tissue between the cage and the menagerie. It made total perfect sense. He really does love her, and he really does want to go back to Talos IV, and he thinks about her often. And, like, of course Spock's going to bring him back after he's had this horrible accident. So that made perfect sense. That was great. But Spock's pain, it's classic quintessential landmark strong suit formation. Like, his desire to be completely logical was built out of the pain that he felt when he gave himself to trying to be human within the unique consciousness that he inhabits of being a human versus Vulcan, sort of confused most of the time about things. And that child who plays Spock, he does a very good Spock. I really believed he was scared and concerned for his sister. I had tears in my eyes. I was like, oh, no, little baby Spock. It's okay. And, so this experience that young child Spock has of being hurt by Burnham, I mean, it makes him the Spock that we see for all time, up until, like, Star Trek VI, where he's like, oh, I've been dead before, and he's reconciled emotions and logic to a certain extent. And then later on in Unification Parts 1 and 2 in Next Generation, where we see him grumpy, but basically still kind of emotional a little bit. So anyway, they've added a wrinkle to the development of Spock that is interesting. They've added some subtlety and some precision to what we hadn't gotten before, and we want to see where Spock goes and how this works out and how he plays a part in everything working out. And I just think that's great. I mean, did you notice that the water was flowing upwards in the Talosians' underground lair?
No.
Yeah, it was
like a fluid.
Yeah. We're back to time as like a fluid. By the way, I thought Ethan Peck does a very good Spock as well. Like, he has just sort of light touches of his own expression of Spock, but he mainly does a very aligned and excellent sort of channeling of what we expect Spock to sound and look and feel like from Leonard Nimoy, and especially at this phase in his development, given that the cage is also real and true. And his smile was delightful. Like, it aligns with where Spock is, and it was just really cool. I mean, can Spock smile? Well, we've seen him do it twice. This is great. What do you think of
Peck's in the original series one time?
Oh, yeah, when Kirk comes back from the dead. That's right.
Yeah. He says, Jim, and he smiles. I think the best thing about the new Spock is that I got the voice right. Because the big thing about Leonard Nimoy is his deep voice. And Zachary Quino does not have a deep voice. And so I just never bought his voice as Spock.
You know the real star of this episode?
Yeah?
The future space Roomba. Those little things that were cleaning the mess hall. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, they weren't just cleaning, they were like repairing stuff.
I could start a whole house cleaning service with those.
If you had robots that worked for you.
Yes.
Yeah, many people could do that.
Yes.
Here's a question. So is it part of the uniform code of conduct that the one holding the phaser asks the questions?
I'm
really curious about this uniform code of conduct and what's in
there. I actually want to read it. I imagine there's a lot of boring stuff like don't pee on the floor.
You know, I was going to say that would be obvious, but I guess they have people from many, many different cultures.
Speaking of pee, actually not at all. Melissa George playing Vina is exquisitely gorgeous. Like,
yeah, do you think she was hotter than the 1960s version?
Yeah, and in fact, I think she may have changed the illusion of who she was and what she looked like in order to fit her illusion Pike's desires. Like my desire, so I've always thought the perfect woman would be Mystique from X-Men because she can turn into any woman. And like a man naturally will probably, every man, generally speaking, would probably want multiple women. So, you know, Vina, there's like a what do you call it?
She can shapeshift into different women.
There's an identity drift.
Desire for, she's still the same person though. That's an interesting question. If someone is really polyamorous, would they be satisfied by the same person in different bodies, or would it have to be a different person, a different personality?
I think it depends on who you're talking to. In polyamory, like some people want. What's that?
There's only one answer.
And the
answer is the same.
Is violence.
No, the answer is the uniform code of conduct.
Yeah. The uniform code of conduct is what maybe the aliens that are destroying everything, they're just obeying an upgraded form of the uniform code of conduct.
Uniform
and maybe the ultimate upshot of this long timeline shifting is that the uniform code of conduct, there's like one clause in it right now that eventually gets grossly misinterpreted by Control later on. And in this show, like it all comes down to the season finale where like there's a like legal debate among high level members of the Federation Council, and they like shift a very slight phrasing of the uniform code of conduct for Starfleet, and it resolves everything.
And that prevents the destruction of the galaxy by robots?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. As long as there's a discussion around a long table, I'm satisfied. And maybe the logic extremists would actually have some good input on this because they've thought through things very carefully.
So what did you think of the Talosians kind of needing the memories of others in order to learn or to survive? They say they need it. which makes it seem like they're living off of it. I feel like since they realized that emotions they couldn't use their powers on them is something that's really like underscored in the original episode, like they've just gotten fascinated by the emotional memories of other beings. And so their commitment is to basically like learn whatever they can. And so whenever a human or anybody like that comes close to them, they're like, all right, we gotta learn because we're, I don't know, wanting more power or whatever.
I think they're bored. You know, they're in their little cave.
I think they're bored too.
They're talking to each other telepathically. They know each other all really well. Imagine how boring that's kind of lonely. And they want some real experiences. They want to understand stuff, and they want to experience real, strong emotions. It's like how we watch movies about extreme emotional situations that we're never going to experience, hopefully. It's like why we watch shows with very unusual emotional experiences.
Yeah.
I think they're like, their planet got wiped out, and they're just hanging out, and they're just thinking, and they're just craving anything new, any kind of experience, any kind of knowledge that breaks them out of this thing they're in. They display their planet as a black hole, which is an illusion, but in some way it is a black hole in that, there's only a finite amount of stuff in there.
Here's the thing, though. Maybe they have that. So here's the integrated motivation for them. They trust humans because humans are a known quantity, and they want memories and experience through humans, and they're excited about that. And so the moment one shows up, they want to take one from them. But their generalized illusion is to keep away all other species. And they just didn't know that some humans were coming. And Spock, oh my God, that scene, after so much Spock teasing, and after so much Spock not doing anything in the last episode and being kind of like, like, to have that moment where he comes to life and he like smashes the lever down and like fights Burnham in order to honor like the logic of the situation, like that was awesome. That was so satisfying for me. Spock throughout the whole episode was so satisfying. I mean, his expression, it's just really good to see somebody playing actual Spock again. And you're right, I agree. Quinto was a good alternate universe version of Spock, like a Spock in a distorted mirror, if you will. But this is Spock. This is Spock.
Young Spock.
Here's a question. If you had a horrible accident, would you choose to be the actual expression of your body, or would you choose a comforting illusion of yourself?
It depends on how good the illusion is. At some point, it's not an illusion anymore. When Venus shows her face, is that like her revealing her true body? Or I got the impression she's not even physically standing there. Like her actual body is just like contorted in a cave somewhere with some little drip of consciousness going on in her brain, and the Telosians are projecting that drip into a body. If you're getting projected into an illusory body anyway, you might as well be a hot woman and not like a scarred monster.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd go for the comforting illusion, man. I don't see any downside, really. It makes you dependent on the Telosians. So, like, if you don't trust the Telosians, then, yeah, maybe not. But, I don't know. They seem okay.
I mean, they have nice jewelry.
They do. Yeah, I like their fashion sense.
This what?
I like their fashion sense.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I like that they can still converse in the ancient way, which makes me wonder, like, they must be talking that way sometimes, or else they wouldn't have practice and they wouldn't know how to do it well. And then when they started trying to speak, it would be like, blah, blah, blah. So it must not be that ancient.
They have pretty big heads, implying they have lots of ninja skills. that they can access at any time, potentially.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So I liked the expression, how is it that I can remember tomorrow? That was kind of poetic. And
that was
fits
cool.
with the Spock that they've shown us this season has our aesthetic character. Like, he actually has an appreciation for aesthetics. He drew that dragon thing that was flying, and we know that he plays the lute or whatever it is, the Vulcan lyre from the original series. So having him show off his poetry in expression is really satisfying. Like, I really appreciate that. And then, so that memory scene was trippy. Spock's pain. This episode could have easily been called Spock's Pain. And if memory serves, oh man, if memory serves, it's not there in the title. If memory serves. Does memory serve Vina? No, she does not like to identify with her memories. It doesn't serve Spock because he's like confused. He's got his sense of what time was, but now it's uprooted. And the restoration of Spock to himself is part of the arc of this season, which I like. And then with Culber, does memory serve him? No. I mean, it doesn't serve him to make his way as a consciousness, as a being for itself, to quote Sartre, like being in itself as a rock that does not have the capacity for self-definition through language and through the negotiation with language. Being for itself is continually projecting itself as a consciousness. It's creating what it is for itself. And so this episode is basically an existential meditation on the nature of memory and how it constitutes identity and what it means to be an identity. And actually, for those who have read the Control novel, there's a subtlety where Section 31 has been so pervasive in the development of Starfleet and the Federation since the very inception of the Federation, since before the Federation, according to the novel, that it becomes then a question of, like, all of our memories don't serve anymore. And in fact, they don't serve all the way into the future, where Control is revising its own history through changing the timeline, potentially, right? So, yeah, it's crazy, it's interesting, and this whole episode is iconicized through the scene where you're looking down at Culber in the turbolift, which I thought was a great camera angle, not done anywhere else that I've seen, generally speaking, and he's tortured. He's just antsy and alienated and angsty and doesn't know what to do, and he's kind of, we know eventually that he's traveling somewhere to deal with what's there in his consciousness. But he's just grasping at straws. So, like, Richard, I will totally assert that the depth of philosophy to be addressed in this episode, it makes up for everything that was lacking in literally every episode until now. Yeah. Literally every episode in this series, yes. I mean, all the stabs, all the false starts, all the stumblings. We mentioned Benatar and the antinatalists were talking about identity and memory and sensation and violence, and I mean, this is good shit. I really like it. I really appreciate it.
It's a philosophical orgasm.
Yet another, yes. So the last thing that I wanted to point out was between Stamets and Culber. It's this elegant angst between Culber and Tyler, and it's also an elegant angst between Culber and Stamets. Stamets, I felt a lot of compassion for him because, Culber wants to be authentic to who he is now and not feel pressured to feel any particular feelings based on his past experience. And Stamets loves him and naturally expects him to want to be with him. We know who you are, he says. But he doesn't. And so Culber has to reclaim his own identity. He has to regenerate his own identity. He has to create something completely new with the raw materials that are available to him. And in the moment when he chooses to fight Tyler, that's when I think he begins to do it. And he even says afterwards, hey, I'm not going to let you tell me not to feel something that I'm actually feeling. So it's like the arc of existentialism. Like, what moves, touches, and inspires you in your life to take action on and to work through and to make happen? Well, for him, it's beating the guy who caused him the angst of questioning his identity, where he previously had one that was stable and coherent and consistent and reliable.
I get the sense that Culber's just looking for a way to express anything. It's like he feels this gnawing feeling that what he's feeling is not right, is not what people expect. His body is not fitting into his mind's not fitting into his brain. He just wants to get sort of carried away on any wave of coherent emotion, because that'll give him some coherence. At least then he'll be going in some direction instead of being pulled in a million directions at once. And the anger at Tyler, he sees him, and it's almost like he doesn't really Culber doesn't really seem angry. It's almost like he's like, okay, I'm going to fight this guy now. It's like he's going to try this out. Maybe this is going to solve my problem.
He really does look like that. He's like, the way that he touches his neck, he's like considering something. He's not actually compelled by anger.
It's like he feels that little urge
in
himself, and he's like, what if I follow this? What if I let this little thing express itself? And I don't get the sense that he really is, catharticized and healed. I get the sense that, this didn't really work. It may have improved his situation slightly, but he's not back.
Here's the thing. Violence is life-affirming for him. Violence is the only meaningful expression available to him that, as we see in the episode, causes him to actually feel and actually have authentic experience that isn't just people around him telling him who he is or, who he should be or whatever. And, of course, thank God for Starfleet's compassion. I mean, I guess he's on leave until he gets his head screwed on right and his head out of his ass. And figures out if he even wants to be in Starfleet anymore, which, Discovery's going to be jumping around for a while, or not literally jumping, but working on figuring things out. So he's going to be there, just like Stamets has to stick around. So clearly they're going to do something with him. I'm not sure what, and I'm really curious what. It could be anything, actually. He is, in a sense, the epitome character of this episode.
I'm glad that you dug that up, because when I watched this the first time, I was thinking the whole Stamets-Culber thing seems kind of disconnected from everything else. But there is a deep thematic continuity here. And we'll have to see what happens. I'm sure something dramatic is going to happen with these two. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending the time building up this emotional scenario. Maybe one of them is going to sacrifice himself for the other or something. I'm getting that.
That would be interesting.
Maybe Culber's going to find his meaning in self-sacrifice. Maybe maybe he's the Red Angel.
Well,
who is the Red Angel?
That would be relatively boring, given what's available. I want Stamets to kill himself for Culber, and Culber to just be faced with this experience of
Yeah, I agree that would be better.
Doesn't really mean anything.
That would be a better way to generate pathos, but I like Stamets as an actor better, so I want him to stay.
Yeah, I really like Stamets too. So the Spock and Burnham chemistry, or shall we say anti-chemistry, was really great. Like they don't work well together. They express their not working well very well, if that makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The actors work well together in expressing a legitimate emotion, but I like how there's this sibling rivalry or whatever thing. It's really satisfying. It's really interesting. And then back to the Talosians again. They're pretty delightfully creepy. My curiosity is, in order for them to project outwards, are they always there in your mind once you are within a certain distance of them? Like how powerful is their telepathy? Is it so expansive and so deep? I mean, we see that it's comprehensive, it's intense, past Vulcans, past Betazoids. So, I get the sense that they're always there, but there's a certain level or layer of your mind that they can't necessarily go into without your consent or without your consciousness being a part of it. What do you think?
I think it falls off as an inverse square law like gravity.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then there's which means it's just an electromagnetic thing, obviously.
Yep.
It's got to be
it's propagating in three-dimensional space, radiating out. In the same way that gravity, actually, every atom in the universe is influenced gravitationally by every other atom in the universe. It's just the influence is usually minuscule and unmeasurable. In the same way, maybe the Talosians are actually in contact with every alien mind out there, just the ones that are far away. It's only a tiny, tiny bit of contact. In the same way that there's a little bit of control in every computer.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe it would actually be really cool if it was the Talosians versus Control. On some level.
The organic minds versus the machine mind. That's
something like that.
Psychic war that's been going on behind the scenes. Yeah, that would be okay. No, that would be awesome.
That would be awesome. That'd be epic. So in the next episode, we get Arium. I'm curious to see which side she ends up being on and how that works out.
We don't know anything about her. We didn't get a short trek about her backstory. If she turns out to just be rock bottom evil and irredeemable because she got infected and can't be fixed now, then I'll be like, okay.
Well, so behind the scenes, this is interesting. She's been played by multiple actors, actually.
Oh. I don't even know who I am.
Yeah. I mean, she was played by Sarah Mittich in the first season and Hannah Cheeseman in the second season. And she's described as an augmented human. So I don't even know what that is. I mean, we have no idea what's going on with her. And I'm sure we will find out. I'm sure that they will go into that. If there's anything to be empathized with, there will be empathy brought about for this character.
What if she's the Red Angel?
No, she's not the Red Angel.
What if we get no character development on her at all, and then at the end it turns out she's the Red Angel?
That would be a bad decision.
What if the Red Angel is number one?
What if the Red Angel is just some guy named Earl?
What if it's Takuvma?
Come back from the dead.
We know it's a human. We know it's a human. That's a non-starter. What if it's Prime Universe Georgiou?
No, she's dead.
Yeah, well, maybe something happened. Maybe she got transported away from her body maybe the Talosians captured her consciousness.
That would be too much even for this show. Well, we dug it up. We dug up the gold nuggets and the diamond core of this show for people to explore and enjoy. I feel like we've done our job, and it's much easier, I will say, to do our job when there's material to sink our teeth into, which for the first time I feel like in months we have material, and so I'm really grateful to the writers. The only issue I would see going forward is maintaining this high quality of expression. And yeah, I mean, so that's a thing. Not all she wrote, but yeah. Any closing thoughts or any more points on notes or some stuff you want to share?
I've gone through my notes. I think it was good.
Yeah, it was good.
No,
I stand by my 10 out of 10.
No, I don't see any real problems.
Well, on that note, I will conclude only by saying that I know who the identity of the Red Angel actually is. I received a direct message from one of the writers, and they said it was Richard